All right, I want to thank everybody for coming out to this next installment of our Mountain Zoom series, which is done in conjunction with Wise County Extension and the Extension offices in Letcher County, Kentucky and Harlan County, Kentucky. And one of the topics that we did very early on in the pandemic when we first started the Mountain Zoom series, we had Adam Boring come and do a mushroom presentation for us, and it was very well received and something that people are constantly interested in. So we talked about having him come back and do one for fall mushrooms. Adam Boring is a native of Wise County here. He's one of our Virginia Master Naturalists in the High Knob chapter, and he took a liking to fungi and quickly became our guru. He's the one that we send our mushroom pictures to for identification. So we're very happy that he could speak with us tonight. And Adam, thank you very much for talking to us about fall mushrooms. So I'm going to turn it over to Adam, and I'm sure you'll enjoy this presentation.
Well, thanks for all that, and it's a pleasure being here tonight. So I've got about an hour. Is that how long this lasts, or 30 minutes? What is it?
Yes, yeah, you've got an hour if you need that.
All righty. So I may go kind of quickly because I've got about 40 slides prepared. Some of the slides are just pictures, but hope you guys are ready. Let me pull it up here. All right. Can everybody see this and hear me okay still? All
yes.
right. Some heads.
Yes.
Good deal. All right, so as Phil said, my name is Adam Boring. I'm a Virginia Master Naturalist of the High Knob chapter, and I'm not sure what got me into liking fungi so much, but it's just kind of what stuck, and I'm glad that it worked out that way because there's a lot of mycophobia in North America associated with mushrooms that I like to hope that I'm able to dispel a little bit of here in our area. So the first thing I want to go over is just the agenda for what I'm going to talk about tonight. So the first little bit is going to be about foraging safety, and we're going to move on to where to forage in Southwest Virginia, Northeast Tennessee, and Southeast/Eastern Kentucky. Purchasing wild mushrooms, how to identify some select wild fall mushrooms, and then some mushrooms that you should avoid during this time of year. So foraging safely, many of us like to grow up. Many of us grew up in this area and are aware of a lot of the dangers that we have in our woods, like bobcats or black bears or venomous snakes, biting, stinging insects, that sort of thing, poison ivy. That kind of thing is going to be present year round, different things all year round. So just be on the lookout for any kind of dangerous wildlife while you're out foraging. If you find mushrooms that are growing around poison ivy, I would suggest just leaving those alone because you don't know what kind of the oils, I forget the name of the oil from poison ivy, may be inside the mushroom, and you don't want to ingest that. Look out for loose boulders or wet ground, stuff like that. You don't want to fall and break an ankle, fall into a river. If it's been raining and that river's been up, that's pretty bad. Widowmaker trees, so that's a large section of tree that may be hanging above you, or a dead tree that's leaning on another tree. And if you walk under one of those, you never know when that thing's going to fall. Just you walking under and touching it or stepping on the ground nearby could shake it just enough for it to finish its little cycle to fall on your head and make a widow out of your wife, or a widower out of your husband. Look for weather patterns. You might want to check the weather before you leave for the day. Make sure that it's not going to be thunderstorming. Don't want to be caught on a mountain in a thunderstorm, particularly with those widow makers. If you got a thunderstorm coming in, there's going to be a lot of wind blowing around, and it can break the tops of dead trees off and blow them onto the ground. I've had several friends up in the Ohio area talk about that happening to them, and pieces of tree landing in front of them. Pictured below are some of the things that you might want to take with you. Some kind of water or water purifier. The Sawyer Mini system, it screws onto a smart water bottle. You want to wear some kind of warm clothing. If you do go in the rain, make sure you're wearing a rain jacket or something like that. There are a lot of people who hunt for mushrooms during hunting season. So turkey season, deer hunting season, you want to wear something that's orange to be able to get their attention so you don't accidentally get shot yourself while you're out there looking for mushrooms. Some other little things that could be helpful are a basket to carry your finds in, mesh bag, wicker basket, plastic bag. It doesn't really matter what you choose. A lot of people will say different things, but as long as you're getting them home and pulling them out of the plastic bag in a quick amount of time, you don't have to worry anything about using a plastic bag. A brush is great for cleaning off your mushrooms. When you pick a lot of them, you may have some debris on the bottoms of them. There are knives that they make, mushroom hunting knives, that have brushes attached to the bottom of them. So it's kind of an all-in-one deal. Opinel, I don't know how it's pronounced. I think it's one of the brands of mushroom knives that does that. Camera would be a good idea to take with you, your cell phone, smartphone. Take a bunch of pictures of the mushroom that you have. If you're not very sure about what you found, you could post them on an identification form online, like on Facebook. I am one of the admins in the Virginia Mushroom Hunters group. There's also Virginia mushroom identification forum. There's fungus identification, mushroom identification. There are probably hundreds of identification groups readily available on Facebook. For those of you who may be in Kentucky, there are Kentucky Mushrooms Official is one, I think, and there's Bluegrass Mycological Society is another really great one. Northeast Tennessee, there's Tennessee Mushroom Hunters and Foragers, I believe is the name of that group there. They're all great groups. So choosing where you're going to forage is going to be super important, because you don't want to get in trouble for trespassing or for being somewhere where you're not supposed to be. There are some places like certain national parks or national forests that only allow you to harvest certain types of mushrooms, and others that will only let you harvest certain amounts of mushrooms. So before you go mushroom hunting, make sure it's legal where you go. And I'm going to talk about some of the places locally here. So in Southwest Virginia, state parks are generally off limits for mushroom foraging. They don't want you picking anything on state park land. I quoted from their website here: collecting any animal or plant is strictly prohibited except by permit from Richmond State Parks headquarters, or as allowed by the park during environmental education programming. And that's I mean, it's just bottom line for them. In national forests, national parks, they're going to vary per location. So in George Washington and Jefferson National Forest, I don't think that you need a permit, and there's no limit on the amount. But the catch is, for the George Washington Jefferson National Forest website, where this information is located, it actually says Daniel Boone National Forest, which is in Kentucky. So it looks like there's been a copy and paste error, or the wrong web page been sent over or something like that. So I've never run into any trouble harvesting in George Washington Jefferson National Forest. So I'm thinking that it's okay, but you may want to call just to be sure. But you only want to do it for personal use on any kind of federal land. You can't harvest anything commercially, make your own profit on any kind of national land. Cumberland Gap National Historic Park, that's down in the tip of Virginia. They only allow you to pick morel mushrooms, and it's only half a gallon per person per day. And you can't sell those. Again, it's for personal use only. Wilderness areas, we've got several wilderness areas on this side of the United States. The closest one to us here in Southwest Virginia is the Stone Mountain Wilderness, and that's what I've got over here pictured. It's kind of outlined. If you look at the map, it might be hard to see, but in the top right of the map, you can see Cherokee Lake. And then below the green section, there's Cave Springs Road. So it's going to be on the back side of the mountain from Cave Springs Road, on the same side as Cherokee Lake, going down a little bit. I'm not sure if there's any hiking trails or anything like that in that area, but that's one wilderness area, and they're very vague. Their website talks about not taking any plant material, whether it's dead or alive. So I would probably think that fungi are probably likely included into that list, even though technically fungi are not plants. They're not even closely related. Fungi are more closely related to us than they are to plants. Your best bet, if you want to avoid any kind of these rules and regulations and stuff like that, is to find somebody with some nice woods on their property, nice amount of acreage, and get permission to hunt on their land. Get it in writing. That way, God forbid something happened and they decide that they don't want you there anymore. Get that in writing so that you can forage on that property with no issues. And, bonus, if you get certified for selling wild mushrooms, which I'll talk about later, you can sell those mushrooms from private property. In Northeast Tennessee, again, state parks are very conflicted. It says the gathering or collecting for personal use, reasonable quantities of natural products of a renewable nature, including but not limited to fruits, berries, and driftwood, is permitted. However, the gathering or collecting of such products for the purpose of commercial sale or other commercial use is prohibited. But it also says the destroying, digging, cutting, removing, or possession of any tree, shrub, or other plant is prohibited without a permit granted by the Assistant Commissioner of Parks and Recreation. So again, the state parks there are probably lumping in mushrooms into the same category as plants. Wilderness areas in Tennessee are also vague. They say no taking any plant material dead or alive, so fungi are also likely included again. Cherokee National Forest, which is down in the more southeastern part of eastern Tennessee. The website makes no mention of forest products that don't need permits, kind of like how George Washington National Forest and Daniel Boone say that it's okay. But I know a guy from Tennessee who's an avid mushroom hunter, and he's spoke to the people at the ranger's office and was told 1 gallon per day could be foraged. Again, the Cumberland Gap National Historic Park, it's also in Northeast Tennessee, so 1/2 gallon of morels per person per day for personal use. Smoky Mountain National Park, I can't see with all these buttons up here. Smoky Mountain National Park. So they actually do specifically address mushrooms, and some of the way it explains is pretty cool. Some of it's not so much. So they may be collected under the following conditions. They got to be at least 100 feet away from roads, parking areas, picnic areas, campgrounds, structures, or other facilities. They may only be edible species. So no picking other stuff for research for anybody who's a weirdo like me who likes to throw everything into a filing cabinet for future study. And may only be the fruiting bodies growing on soil or rotting logs on the ground, limited to 1 pound per person per day for all fungal species combined. So if you're picking 3 or 4 different edible species, it's still only a pound, and a pound is not a lot whenever it comes to mushrooms. A couple of the things that are kind of not so great about those regulations is it says that it's got to be on the soil or rotting logs on the ground. So if you go during the summertime and you're looking for reishi mushrooms or something that grows on trees, then you're kind of out of luck because you're not supposed to get it if it's growing off the tree. Whether they're dead or not, you can't pick them off of them. So again, private property is going to be fantastic in Northeast Tennessee because you don't have any rule but what the landowner is telling you don't need to collect. Then we got Eastern Kentucky. So in state parks, permits are required. I know 2 individuals who have permits to be able to collect in Kentucky state parks, but they do so for research. They don't do it for edibility. So obtaining that permit would likely be very difficult if you're just trying to do it for being able to eat things. National Forest, National Parks, again, very per forest and park. We got National Boone or Daniel Boone National Forest in Kentucky that requires no permit and no limit. So it's going to be a fantastic place in Kentucky to go and look for edible mushrooms. Any of the nature preserves, such as Bad Branch Nature Reserve or Blanton Forest State Nature Preserve, which is where Knobby Rock is near Harlan, you're not going to be able to pick anything at those locations. They are very strict in nature preserves. They don't want anything picked, disturbed, or anything like that. They want it left absolutely as is. I was looking around a little bit on Google earlier about where we can pick mushrooms in Kentucky, because I was having some difficulty finding that kind of information in Kentucky. And I found one Facebook post where somebody had posted on the, who is it here? The Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife Resources Facebook page, and asked if they can pick morel mushrooms, if it was legal or not. And they said, yes, it is legal to pick morel mushrooms on any wilderness management area lands in Kentucky. There are several of those in eastern Kentucky. Hensley Pine Mountain is one area that's really close to the Virginia line. There's the Birchall Beach area, the Mill Creek area, Cane Creek, Beaver Creek, and Buck Creek areas are all sort of in eastern Kentucky. The one that I'm not entirely sure about is Martin's Fork, because some websites say that Martin's Fork is managed by the Army Corps of Engineers. And then there's other websites that say that Martin's Fork is a wilderness management area. So I tried to call them earlier and get some confirmation. I I only got to speak to one lady who didn't, she wasn't very comfortable saying yes or no to my question. She tried to refer me to somebody else, but what she told me was she thinks that it's okay to hunt mushrooms on the wilderness management areas, other than morel mushrooms, as long as you're not digging up any kind of mushrooms like truffles, something like that, and as long as you're not hurting the trees like we talked about at the Smoky Mountain National Park. They don't want you knocking down any live trees or cutting into the bark to pull off live mushrooms for those locations. And once again, private property is going to be your best friend in that area. So purchasing wild mushrooms, beautiful stock photo here from Alamy, as you can see all over the photo. In the state of Virginia, to legally sell wild forage mushrooms, a person must complete an application with the Virginia Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services and obtain a wild mushroom food safety certification. They can do that through mushroommountain.com. In Virginia, we've got a guy named Eugene Hutters. He's actually the head admin of the Virginia Mushroom Hunters page, who is certified to sell wild mushrooms. And I spoke to him earlier today, and he's more than happy to ship any kind of dried mushrooms that he finds, and perhaps fresh mushrooms if a large enough quantity is ordered from him, because he has to deal with refrigeration and things like that when sending them out. Cultivated mushrooms, they don't really have any rules on that. They can be sold without any kind of special approval or license at farmers markets and stuff like that. A lot of times those places are already being regulated by the state or the federal government. But if you're selling anything, again, in Virginia especially, no selling anything from state or federal land. In Kentucky, there are no wild mushrooms to be sold at farmers markets. They're very strict about wild mushrooms. Cultivated mushrooms are just fine. When I say cultivated, people grow things like lion's mane mushrooms and oyster mushrooms. We got these ones called chestnut mushrooms, shiitake mushrooms, things like that can be grown at home and can be sold. One of the vendors is Mushroom Hauler. I found at Pikeville Farmers Market. I've never interacted with them, don't know anything about them. Maybe you guys know who they are, but it sounds like a cool little thing, and I might go over and check out at the Pikeville Farmers Market one day. In Tennessee, I talked to the guy that I know from Tennessee, and he doesn't know of any laws requiring certification to be able to sell mushrooms, and I couldn't find anything online about having to be certified to sell mushrooms by any residents over there. So it's up to you guys as to who you feel comfortable buying wild mushrooms from. You know, you want to make sure that it's somebody who you feel is knowledgeable, that they know what they're talking about, making sure that their product is clean, feel free from any kind of mold or something like that. So I know me personally, I think I would rather buy from somebody in Virginia, because they got to go through a pretty rigid process to be able to sell those type of things. But that's just me. You guys can make your own conclusion. Here is a list of some of the mushrooms that can be sold in Virginia. Do I got a question? No? Okay. So some of the mushrooms that can be sold in Virginia, again, this is listed on both the application and on Mushroom Mountain's website. And these are not only fall, these are, all year long. You can look through there, but looking at this list, you may find some black trumpets this time of year. Wood ears are pretty much all year long. Chicken of the woods are possible this time of year. Hedgehogs, lion's mane, oyster mushrooms, let's see, maitake or hen of the woods, bluets, honey mushrooms. There's a lot of fall mushrooms on here actually. So, but it's a very extensive list. Most every popular edible mushroom is here on this list if anybody wants to snap a picture of it really quick. So these are the primary mushrooms that I'm going to talk about as far as being edible today. There's a fantastic YouTube channel out there called Learn Your Land. He's also got a Facebook page. His name is Adam Harrington. He's from Western Pennsylvania, actually. And he's put together this collage of edible fall mushrooms that I'm going to just piggyback off of and talk about with some of my own information, some of my own pictures, and another website's information. So up first, let's talk about honey mushrooms. Honey mushrooms, also known as Armillaria species, the one picture here on the left is actually a picture of Armillaria malaya, the first one here. We got several different kinds of species in the area. The three most common are Armillaria malaya, Armillaria gallica, and then this Armillaria cespitosa. First one, Armillaria malea, again pictured to the left here. It's also known as just the honey mushroom, the common honey mushroom. It's got a golden yellow to brownish cap. Look for the yellow on the underside of the ring. That's usually pretty stiff on the ring. You can see in the picture over here, there's a ring up near the top, and it's flared out pretty well. A lot of times it'll have this brown or olive brown stem with the white scales on it, and it's going to have white flesh and a white spore print. Armillaria gallica, also known as the bulbous honey mushroom. It's pretty common. It's actually one of my friends. Her name's Dawn. It's one of her favorite edible mushrooms. She says it's more tasty than the honey mushrooms. It's got a brownish cap. It's got scales on it. The mushroom sometimes has an overall pinkish hue to it. I've seen several of them that's been very pinkish. Look for individual mushrooms or small clusters of these mushrooms that have a yellow bulbous base and a cottony ring up near the gills. White to pinkish flesh with a white spore print. Desarmillaria cespitosa used to be called Armillaria tabescens, and this name has recently, actually this year in the last few months, changed to Desarmillaria cespitosa. But that's the ringless honey mushroom. You'll see these in people's yards with like dozens sometimes of mushrooms sprouting from one spot, radiating all around from the stump of a tree. They are pretty common. They got tan to brown caps. Look for a clustered growth at the base of trees. They don't have a ring. That's the big telltale sign for Desarmillaria. Desarmillaria literally means without a ring. There's going to be several or over a dozen of them in one cluster. They're going to have kind of long stems. They got white flesh with a white spore print, and in particular, they're going to like silver maples. There are some miscellaneous species that look very similar to these here, but they're all edible as well. A lot of people don't like the stems. They can get kind of tough on these Armillaria species, and they'll eat just the caps. So here's a couple of collages that I made. Here on the left, you can see the caps of Armillaria malea, Desarmillaria cespitosa, gallica, and then I've also added in Omphalotus illudens, which is the jack-o'-lantern mushroom, just for comparison. I made these photos because somebody was confused about how to tell apart the jack-o'-lantern from the ringless honey mushrooms. So here you can see the caps of all of them. Over on the right-hand side, you can see the undersides of all of them, all the gills. Notice how the gills kind of stop right whenever they hit the stem. They're not really super crowded, but they're not really far apart either. And then notice the colors, they're kind of creamy and even pinkish sometimes on the Armillaria, but the Omphalotus illudens is orange. You want to avoid that orange. The flesh of the jack-o'-lantern, the Omphalotus illudens, is orange, whereas the honey mushrooms are going to be white, or like I was talking about, sometimes pinkish with the gallica. The next pictures here show the rings. So the Armillaria malea has that stout, flared out ring with the yellow underside. You can see it from two different angles here, and the yellow there. The Armillaria gallica has what's called a cortina on it. It's kind of just a really flimsy, cottony, web-like cap that's going to be, or veil that's covering the gills underneath the cap. Omphalotus illudens doesn't have a ring at all, and neither does Desarmillaria cespitosa. When they're very young, this is what some of them can look like. So Omphalotus illudens at the top, both pictures on the top there, they're going to actually look sort of similar to the ringless honey mushrooms, the Desarmillaria cespitosa in that top left photo. That particular set there kind of fooled me, and I picked it and turned it over and seen the picture on the top right there, and I was like, whoa, wait a minute. This isn't a ringless honey mushroom. This is a jack-o'-lantern because of those bright orange gills. And you can see the young Armillaria malea on the bottom left and gallica on the bottom right. And you can kind of see the yellow underneath. Bluets, also known as Lapista Nuda or Clitocybe nuba, they're found growing in organic debris alone or in groups. Cap margin is enrolled when young, which means that it kind of curly-cued in on itself. It can be flat and wavy whenever it gets older. The cap is smooth when it's dry and tacky when it's moist. Purple to purple brown in color that also often fades to a tan brownish color. If you don't find them whenever they're pretty young, they're usually pretty brown all over. The gills are attached to the stem and purplish in color at first, later becoming pinkish brown to brownish. The stem is equal all the way down, so it's the same size, the same width all the way up and down it. But the base is sometimes enlarged, not all the time, but sometimes. The stem is going to be colored like the gills, and there might be some purplish or pale brownish mycelium all over the base and actually woven into the substrate that it's growing from. So all the leaves and all the conifer duff and stuff that they're growing out of is going to send out a bunch of mycelium, this species does. So that whenever you pick that mushroom, you're actually going to pick up a bunch of leaves and stuff with it. It's going to make a mess, but that's one identifying characteristic of this mushroom as well, is that super heavy mycelium growth underneath. The spores are going to be pinkish and not rusty brown, which is important for differentiating this mushroom from Cortinaria species or webcaps. They're going to have rusty brown spores. So if you take a spore print of one of these thinking you have a bluet and it turns rusty brown, then that's not it. You're wanting this pink, and I'll show you. Way over here in the bottom right, you'll see this pinkish spore print. It's very, very dainty looking. It's very far from being rusty brown. But here are some other examples of what a bluet can look like. This brownish cap with the pale purplish colors on the stem and the gills. Yellowfoot chanterelles, also known as Craterellus tubeiformis. You'll find these growing with conifers alone or in groups. Caps are convex at first, but eventually become vase-shaped and even have a little hole that goes down in the middle of the cap because it goes straight through the stem as well, because the stem is hollow. Underneath the cap, you're going to be looking at wrinkles and ridges instead of gills. So kind of like a chanterelle, how they don't have true gills. They're going to have pale yellow colors or even a grayish color underneath there. Stem's going to be that yellow to orange yellow color, and it may have some whitish or pale yellow mycelium at the base of it. If you take a bite of it or smell of it and spit the bite back out, it's going to be odor, or it's going to be mild. The odor may be slightly fragrant. Spore print will be white. Yeah, there's a slide that I forgot to delete. Hen of the woods, or maitake, I believe as it's pronounced. Grifola frondosa. That's a very popular fall mushroom. People look for these around the bases of oak trees. I've been recently finding a few of them around some maple trees as well. They are weakly parasitic. So not only do they decay the wood or eat the wood in the tree, they're actually slowly killing the tree as well. They cause a white butt rot, and a butt rot is whenever the bottom of the tree, the very base of the tree, begins to rot away. So that becomes very, very dangerous whenever that goes on for a long period of time, because it'll cause the tree to fall. There are multiple caps that are on a branching structure. The caps are whitish to tan and brownish. They may have concentric zones on them, so it looks like there's little rings growing on it. And the tops are finely velvety at times. The pores are decurrent, which means that the pores go down the stem. They don't just stop where they touch the stem. They keep on going. So they're decurrent, and they're kind of tooth-like, which means that I'll show you. There's a picture on the next page, but they get kind of a sharp edge on part of the pore. They're kind of grayish at first, the pores are, and they become white and get yellow stains whenever they get pretty old. I found one the other day that was pretty old, and it was just yellow all over, and I just wasn't comfortable eating it. There are 1 to 3 pores per millimeter. So if you have a ruler with centimeters on it, look at the marks in between the centimeters. There should be 10 in between 1 centimeter, and that's millimeters for you if you weren't aware of that. So there'll be 1 to 3 pores per millimeter. That can be difficult to see, but 1 to 3 pores is actually fairly large for any kind of polypore. And they're going to be 1 to 3 millimeters deep as well if you cut one of those caps in half. The flesh will be white, and the odor and taste will be mild with the white spore print. So here's a beautiful specimen here with the brown colors. And here we go on the top left, there's a more pale version of it. Bottom left, it's getting a little older. You can see the branching structure in the bottom right for these mushrooms. And then those tooth-like pores like I was talking about in the top right up there. See how they're kind of sharp on one end. Lion's mane mushrooms, Erysium erinaceus. And it's not the only lion's mane type of mushroom that we have around here, but it's the only one I'm going to talk about today in detail. The other 2 species that we have around here are Erysium Coraloids, also known as the coral tooth mushroom, and Erysium Americanus or Americanum, I can't remember which, or the bear's head tooth. This one is the one people find more often in this area. It's just like a big ball that grows on a tree with all these spikes or spines hanging off of them. Theoretically, they're pretty easy to identify because it's pretty much the only thing around here that grows like a clump of spines hanging off of a tree. They like growing on hardwood trees, especially where there's a wound. You can see in my bottom right picture there, this is growing right up in the middle of the trunk of a tree that's got this huge hole that's beginning to rot in the side of it. I also find them on trees that are already dead and laying down. So they're breaking down those trees that are already broken. Beech is one that I've been finding around here lately. They like oaks preferably, but they're not very picky whenever it comes to where they're going to grow around here, it seems like. So these are going to have longer spines. The one that I have pictured in the top left up here was actually pretty young when I picked it, so its spines weren't quite that long. But you can see they're starting to get big in that bottom right picture. These are getting old whenever they start to get yellowish in color, like the bottom left. They'll get a little bit bitter whenever you try to taste and spit, or whenever you cook them, you may taste that bitterness. And that's whenever you'll know that they're getting too old. If they get too bitter on you, as long as they're not infested with insects or something like that, then you can still dry them out and grind them up and put them into a tincture as a medication. I'm not going to talk about medicinal stuff today. We're just doing edibility, but that would be another use for Erysium erinaceus. They are saprobic and parasitic at times, so they again will be working on killing the tree if they're growing on a live tree. Chicken of the woods. We're going to be talking about both chicken of the woods species that we have around here. That's Laetoporus sulphureus and Laetoporus cincinnatus. They are parasitic and saprobic on oaks mainly, but also on other hardwoods in our area. They grow in shelving clusters on the wood. Cincinnatus is usually found on the ground around the base of the tree, no higher than about 6 feet up there thinking, but you'll find it a lot of times on the ground because it's growing from the roots in the ground. The Laetoporus sulphureus is going to be well up on the tree. Now, the big difference between sulphureus and cincinnatus is actually underneath the mushroom. The tops are both going to look about the same. They're going to be mostly orange, and sulphureus is going to have yellow, and cincinnatus will have white mixed in with the orange on the cap. But whenever you flip them bad boys over, you're going to see yellow, bright yellow underneath the sulphureus and white underneath the cincinnatus for the pore colors. They will be, for the sulphureus, that yellow will become kind of dull in age, but so will that orange on top. So they just kind of start to look old. Whenever you see the ones that I got pictured here, those are very fresh and very bright and vibrant. Whenever you cut those, they're going to be very soft. They may even exude a yellow liquid inside of them, and that just tells you how fresh that they are. Whenever they're getting pretty old, it's just a dull orange, and there's not really any of the extra color left on the cap of the yellow or the white on the edge. So and they'll just crumble and be kind of hard or not great at that point. They may have a bunch of bugs at that point too, so you want to avoid them whenever they have all those bugs in them. Try to get them while they're still young and don't have very many bugs in them. They both got a white spore print if you try to take a spore print on them, but a lot of times they don't last that long. They don't dehydrate super well. I dehydrated about a gallon's worth this year simply because I couldn't eat everything that I harvested. And whenever you dehydrate these, they crush into a powder, and a lot of people use these as a soup thickener. They call these chicken of the woods because they think that they taste like chicken, and they kind of do. And I've made chicken sandwiches and chicken nuggets out of both species. I prefer the cincinnatus to the sulphureus. Some people agree with me, some people don't, but that's one great way to cook this is as a deep fried chicken sandwich or something like that. Here's a couple photos of the Laetoporus cincinnatus. You can kind of see the cap there. It's got the orange and the white on the edge is still showing on the caps. It was that one in the middle there is getting pretty big, and that white starting to run out on the cap, but it was still good. And then you can see very white underneath this mess of mushrooms that I ended up getting that day. And then the sulphureus, you can see it growing all around this stump here, the orange yellow on top, and then the yellow pores underneath and the top right here pictured. Puffballs, there's a couple different puffballs that I wanted to talk about today. The first one was Lycoperdon perlatum, or the common puffball. That's what's pictured here on the top. It's saprobic, which means it decays wood, growing alone or in groups under or on hardwoods or conifers. I most often find these under conifers, but they're shaped like an upside down pear with spines. Apiopterodon pyriform, also known as the stump puffball, is the one on the bottom there. It's saprobic on hardwoods and apparently conifers. I didn't know that. I usually find it on downed hardwood trees. They grow scattered, but usually in pretty tight clusters all over the hardwood that's laying down. They're round at first, but as they get older, they become shaped like the other one, like an upside down pear, which coincidentally, the name pyriform, its second, the species epithet, pyriform means pear-shaped. It's spined when it's young with little white spines, and those go away pretty quickly, and it becomes kind of smooth, light to dark brown color overall. If you choose to eat a puffball, you want to cut it in half and make sure that it's totally white on the inside. You don't want any kind of yellow or brown coloration. They kind of start to mature from the very center of the mushroom outwards. So it may start to just have a little bitty yellow dot in the center of your puffball when you cut it in half. Some people peel the mushrooms as well to kind of, I guess, avoid those spines. The biggest thing, though, is to make sure that the puffballs are just totally white inside. If there was any kind of yellow beginning to form, I'd probably recommend that you just go ahead and toss them, because they're a dime a dozen. There's puffballs everywhere, especially those stump puffballs. Those things are just loaded in the woods. So oyster mushrooms, this is actually one of my personal favorites. The mushroom community would probably throw a rock at me if they heard that, but I love oyster mushrooms. Deep frying them on the stove, or frying them in some butter and olive oil, salt and pepper, something like that. They're delicious. But you'll find these growing on hardwoods. They're saprobic. Every once in a while, you might find them growing on conifers. And like you see in the picture here, in overlapping clusters, that's very common. Very rarely you may find them just totally alone. There's another species in the summertime that they usually grow alone in like a scattered group. But the Pleurotus austriatus that we find here in the fall time is almost always in a bunch of all of them, they're together in clusters or in overlapping shelves. The gills, this is very important for oyster mushrooms. The gills are decurrent, and that means, again, like with the pores on the end of the woods, the gills are going to go all the way down the stem. They're not going to stop where they touch the stem. Sometimes the gills will fork at the margin as well. The flesh is going to be thick and white. You might find a bunch of bugs whenever you flip one of these over. There's a lot of black beetles that like to hang out in these things. A lot of times you can wave those out, blow them off, wash them out in the sink, something like that. What you really want to look for is whenever you cut up an oyster, to look for those bug holes where they may be digging inside of it. The odor it's like an oyster mushroom. That's what all the websites describe it as. It's not really got a name for its scent, but once you smell an oyster mushroom, any other oyster mushroom that you smell smells identical. Some people describe it as kind of being like an anise odor, so I guess it's sort of like a faint licorice, but I haven't smelled that personally. Their spore prints are also white. So here on the far left, you can see the cap. It's kind of this whitish brownish color, and you've got a couple of them there. Again, they're together. In the middle here, you can see the decurrent gills, and they can even get a little funny and squirrely whenever they go down the stem. And here's the front side view on the far right of the mushrooms, just looking directly at them, and it's just all gills and all cap, because those gills are decurrent all the way down. So I got on the iNaturalist app and then just searched up for September, October, November mushrooms in our area here. What's most common. So here is these top mushrooms all the way. I just took 3 pages worth of screenshots, and I put stars next to other possibly interesting mushrooms that you might want to keep an eye on. Turkey tail mushrooms, they're going to be flimsy. They're going to have rings on the cap. The different rings on the cap are going to have different sizes of hair, so some short, some long. The pores are going to be super tiny. They're going to be like 7 to 8 millimeters per 7 to 8 pores per millimeter. I mean, they're little. You might need a magnifying glass just to see those things. And they're going to grow on hardwoods and rarely conifers. They're not edible, but they're another one of those medicinal mushrooms. Dryad saddles, that's one that you usually find in the spring, also known as Cereopora squamosus. It does come back around during the fall time sometimes. I actually seen one in Big Stone close to Bullet Park here recently growing from the bottom of a tree. But it was a little close to the road for me to go ask permission for. Whenever you get close to the road with mushrooms like that, you want to be wary of them because they can soak up some of the exhaust and stuff from vehicles. So harvest your mushrooms away from the road if at all possible. Indigo milk caps, or what's I forget the other name of them, but they're blue milkies. It's another name for them. It's just a milk cap that's got this blue milk that comes out of them whenever you cut them. They're gorgeous mushrooms. I've actually got some frozen in my freezer right now that I made some interesting spaghetti with. But they were delicious. I find those more often underneath pines in our area, but they also grow underneath hardwoods as well. But I mean, they're blue on the cap. They got kind of circular designs on the cap as well, and the gills are blue. The stem is blue. Sometimes the stems have spots on them, but they're just blue all over. On the next page there, the gilled polypore, Trametes Bachelina. It's another slightly medicinal mushroom that some people collect. It's going to have a hairy cap surface as well, velvety. It's going to have the concentric rings, kind of like the turkey tail does, with different sizes of hair. But it's kind of going to be more kidney shaped than the turkey tail, kind of more even. And when you flip those things over, they're going to have gills underneath instead of the holes, the polypores, the pores underneath all of it. So they're a pretty cool mushroom to find. And despite its name being Trametes Bachelina, they don't grow on only the Bachelina species, the birch species. They grow on all kinds of different hardwoods. And then over on the far right, the last two listed there, they're not very many found this time of year because they're not quite in season yet. Those will be more of winter mushrooms that maybe I could talk about another time. But the late fall oyster, the late oyster, Sarcomyxa ceratina, and the resinous polypore or Ichnoderma resinosum. Both are edible mushrooms. I've had the resinous polypore and it goes really well in soups, but I've not quite got around to trying the late fall oyster yet. It's kind of the late fall oyster is greenish on the cap with an orangish base, and the gills on those are going to be kind of an orangish yellow color as well. And the resinous polypore, some people actually mistake that for a artist conch, if you know what that is. It's going to have like almost the rainbow looking oil slick kind of color on the cap, but it's not going to be viscid. It's going to be sort of rough, but the whole mushroom is going to be pretty soft. And underneath it'll have little water droplets dripping off typically because they guttate. So their metabolic processes produce an excess of liquid, and it drops at the bottom end of those mushrooms. But soft all over, hardwoods on those, pretty cool mushrooms. So now I want to move on to talk about some mushrooms to avoid during the fall. They're not necessarily lookalikes for any of the edible mushrooms that we talked about. Some of them are, but these are some really important ones to try to at least become familiar with. So funeral bells, also known as Gallerina Marginata. These are deadly toxic. They have amatoxins in them that will lead to liver and kidney failure if it's not treated very quickly. And death can occur as early as 48 hours. So you want to look for these on hardwoods or conifers. I think I typically find these more often on conifers, kind of in the hemlock forests. But they're going to be spring, fall, winter time around here. They're probably the most common deadly mushroom that I encounter in this area. They're kind of small. They're 1.5 to 5 centimeters wide. So, maybe about an inch, inch and a half, 2 inches max. For these mushrooms. The cap's kind of a red-brown color, and they're hygrophanous, which means that after you pick them, they're going to become much more pale because they're drying out. The gills are yellowish to brown and broadly attached to the stem, or sometimes slightly decurrent, so just only going down the stem slightly, not all the way down like an oyster mushroom. The stem is white to brown and reddish brown sometimes, and it may have a weak ring. You can see in this picture here, it's got a little bitty ring up on the stem. That ring falls off all the time, so don't be looking for that ring specifically to know that this is what this mushroom is, because it may not be there. The mycelium at the base of the mushroom can be white if you find it, and if you take a spore print of these, they're going to be rusty brown. Now, these are lookalike for enoki mushrooms, Flammulina velutypes, which are a winter mushroom primarily, but every once in a while somebody confuses these for a honey mushroom because they grow these down to hardwood logs. I've seen these growing alongside honey mushroom mycelium, which is this real thick black strings that go up and down logs or up and down trees. And it looks like, oh, hey, that's probably growing from that black mycelium, but nope, it's not what it is. So be familiar with this one. So up in the top left here, you see the white mycelium there, brown colors overall, the very weak little ring still present there, the rusty brown spore print in that bottom left, right there in the front and center in the middle. You can see how the stem is whitish up top and kind of gets reddish brown down below. Those gills are just meeting the stem there. You got the ring left on that one as well. Top right, still got a ring there, but that stem is mostly red brown on that one. And in the bottom right, you can see how they can kind of grow all together instead of just singly. So you can find these probably by the dozens at times. Jack-o'-lantern mushrooms, also known as Omphallotus ludens. We kind of got introduced to those a little bit earlier whenever I was saying that they could be a lookalike for the ringless honey mushrooms, the Desarmillarius aspitosa. These mushrooms are poisonous and possibly deadly. They have toxins in them called illudins M and S that lead to nausea, vomiting, and dizziness. And it also has muscarine in it, which can lead to sweating, drooling, blurred vision, tremor, convulsions, and death as early as 8 hours after ingestion. These often grow in clusters, but they can be found alone at the base of hardwoods, more specifically red oaks. They love those suckers. The orange cap becomes wavy over time and even gets brownish to blackish in age. The gills are very orange whenever they're young, and even when they're mature, they kind of stay orange up until they're just plumb rotten. But whenever they're really old, they get coated in a white mycelium or white kind of moldy looking substance, which is just another fungus attacking it and breaking it down. It's literally like a mold because mold is fungus. The stem is a pale orange color, and the flesh is also orange whenever you cut them open, and the spore print will be whitish to pale yellow. It's most often confused for chanterelles because they grow at the same time of year pretty abundantly. And whenever you're differentiating from chanterelles, you're looking for that flesh color being orange on the jack-o'-lanterns and white on the chanterelles. That's the biggest thing. Sometimes confused for ringless honey mushrooms, like I showed in that previous picture. Whenever they were super young, it looked similar to the ringless honey mushrooms, or at least with the one that I found. Cool fact about these mushrooms are they're bioluminescent. If you got a good camera that can take long exposure, you can flip them over, put them in a dark location, do like a 30-second exposure, and you may catch the gills glowing. So here they are again whenever they're young, looking like that ringless honey mushroom almost in that top left. And right in the middle, this is their prime. This is like as good as they get, perfect for the bioluminescent photography. And then whenever they're getting old and ancient, nasty, right there they are on the bottom looking like that clustered growth. Sulfur tuft mushrooms, also known as Hyphiloma fasciculare, they grow alone to in groups on conifers usually. Their caps, skinny stems, and gills are often highlighter yellow in color is what I call it. I don't see it described that way online, but it's a very bright yellow. You can kind of see it in the right-hand picture there, and maybe a little bit on the gills in the left-hand picture there. The gills become a purple-brown color due to the spore deposit. Whenever you take a spore print on these, it's going to be a purple-brown color. If you put one of these in your mouth to do a taste and spit test, which is perfectly fine as long as you spit everything back out and it's not going to hurt you, this mushroom is going to be extremely bitter. So it's not going to kill you, but people typically get sick from eating these just because they're so disgusting. Here's another shot of the underside. It's kind of got that yellowish tint underneath there, and you can see they're growing all over the place together. They're a lookalike of another winter mushroom called brick caps. Web caps, also known as Cortinarius species, they're the ones to kind of look out for whenever you're maybe going looking for bluet mushrooms. The bluet mushroom, remember, was kind of brownish on the cap. It could be kind of a purplish on the cap as well, purplish on the stem and the gills, but fades to the brownish color. There are a couple of Cortinarius species that do sort of look similar to that. The biggest thing to separate the Cortinarius from the bluet mushroom is a spore print, and oftentimes the mushroom, when you pick it, will already have some spores on the stem or on the ground underneath it or something like that. So the blue, it's going to have that pinkish spore print. In the Cortinarius here, it's going to have a rusty brown spore print. And these here will also have this cottony web-like veil covering the gills whenever they're young. And that's where people usually find the rusty brown spore print on the stem of the Cortinarius species. I'll show you in the next slide here. But these mushrooms can have what's called aurelinine in them, which can cause flu-like symptoms and then kidney failure. And these symptoms can take between 2 days to 3 weeks to show up with these mushrooms. I am part of a poisons group on Facebook where people from around the world submit when they've eaten mushrooms that they think are poisonous, whenever they're experiencing symptoms, when their dogs, cats, goats, birds, ducks, whatever, eat their mushrooms. And here the last couple of weeks, I've been seeing an increase in aurelinine like symptoms in people. So there are people around the world right now beginning to munch on these by mistake. Here is that one of those Cortinarius species that kind of resembles a blewit. It's got these purple gills underneath, the brownish cap, and the stem is brownish on this one rather than colored like the gills. But see right there in the middle of the screen on that stem, it's got this, looks like an old cobweb going down the stem, but it's a rusty brown cobweb. And that's those rusty brown Cortinarius spores on what's left of that, the cottony, they call it a cortina. And even down there in the bottom left of the picture, you can see the edge of that cottony substance still attached to the edge of that mushroom. So at one point, that veil was totally attached to the stem and it just broke free. But all those spores had fallen on that cortina to cause it to turn that color. Earth balls are a sort of a look-alike for puffball mushrooms because, I mean, they puff out spores whenever you step on them, whenever they get mature. The Latin for those are Sclerodoma species. On the left here, the left two pictures, these are Sclerodoma polyrhizum, and on the right, Sclerodoma citrinum, which is probably the more common one, the one on the right there. They're poisonous. They've killed dogs before, and they mainly make people sick, but they're going to grow alone to gregariously, terrestrially, or in moss. The outside peeling or skin can be cottony, like on the left here, and in the middle photo, it kind of cottony, falling apart, kind of scaly. And on the right, it's more compact and scaly. And I've even found these smooth before. But the big telltale sign for these is you cut one of these in half, and they're going to be black inside. You see both of these mushrooms here. They're this purple, black color on the inside, totally different from a puffball. But be warned, I have found these totally white inside, and I guess it's probably the day of whenever they start growing before they start to turn black on the inside. So at that point, you're going to be looking at the outside of it. And if you don't feel comfortable identifying between this one and the stump puffball, perhaps look at their substrate, what they're growing on, seeing how many is growing around. The stump puffball is going to have a whole lot more of them growing all together. And these Sclerodoma, I've only seen maybe 5 or 6 total in that one area before. So thank you for coming to my TED Talk. I appreciate everybody. If you want to send me pictures of mushrooms to help you identify them, I'm more than happy to do so. I also welcome you to join the Facebook groups that I mentioned, the Virginia Mushroom Hunters, the Bluegrass Mycological Society, the Tennessee Foragers and Mushroom Hunters, all great groups. Not one person knows, every mushroom in the world. It takes a community to identify them sometimes. So here's some places that you can reach me or find some help to identify your mushrooms, or even my TikTok or YouTube if you want to follow along there and learn whenever I describe how to identify other species. So I guess being the end there, we can open it up to questions if Phil is okay with that.
I think Phil may have gotten kicked offline, so we can go ahead and do it in his absence. So questions, we have some in the chat box, and I don't know if all of those have been covered or not.
Let's see here. Let me scroll up here. Bags prevent sporulation. That's kind of a myth. whenever you're out in the woods, just walking in the woods will get the spores on your clothing, and just walking around afterwards, you're spreading spores anyways. Putting them into a plastic bag, you run the risk of them going bad quicker because of, like fruits at the grocery store. If you leave them in a plastic bag too long, they're going to spoil a lot quicker. But it really doesn't matter what type of bag that you use to harvest your mushrooms. If you're going for edible mushrooms, I'd recommend using a basket, honestly, because you don't run the risk of crushing your mushrooms by accident. Part of Martin's Fork looks like it's U.S. Army Corps, and part is Wildlife Management Area. Chad, would you happen to know which part is the Wildlife Management Area?
Jeremy should know, that's his county.
The WMA actually lays to the west of that of the lake itself. So there's a Martins Fork Lake Wildlife Management Area. There's a Martins Fork Wildlife Management Area as well. So you got to be careful where you're at. I do know that the Martins Fork Wildlife Management Area is in Wild Rivers Corridor, and it's actually jointly managed by Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife, as well as the Kentucky Division of Water. So you may have to check on that for hunting mushrooms in those areas. So, but the one around the lake is actually the Martins Fork Lake Wildlife Management Area.
Okay, great. That's good information. Because I go there all the time. I'd be willing to go out there and hunt if I could. So I need to figure out whether it's totally legal or not. Okay, Phil Meek says that this will be posted tomorrow on the YouTube channel. Where are these 3 pages found? Okay, yeah, Island Naturalist. Yep, thank you for answering that, JC and Phil. Yes, the webcat pictures do look a lot like Laccaria ocropurpurea as well. And I recently learned that those are potentially edible as well. I don't know that I'm ready to try that quite yet, but yeah, they are very, very similar. The two. The Cortinarius that I had pictured actually has a booted base, and the ocropurpurea does not. And I think the ocropurpurea likes conifers, whereas the webcat liked hardwoods. But the big difference between them again is going to be spore print color. Emailing slides. Let me take a picture of your email, and I would be more than happy to send the slides to you by email. Okay, heard that some people are more sensitive, not allergic to certain mushrooms. Do you have recommendations for preparing mushrooms to maybe help remedy this, or to know in advance, like boiling or cooking to certain temperatures? Yes, that's absolutely important, especially with things like the honey mushrooms. You want to cook those very well. I always call them barely edible. I've never eaten them myself, but a lot of people say you got to cook the far out of those caps, and they don't eat the stems either because it can cause the GI upset. Same thing with chicken of the woods mushrooms. Surprisingly enough, as wildly edible as it is, like all across the United States, a lot of people get GI upset from eating the chicken of the woods mushroom. So you want to make sure that the chicken of the woods is cooked very thoroughly. I don't know the internal temperature that you want to get that to. Might be something to Google after the meeting here. But for any of the mushrooms that you cook, you want to make sure they're very thoroughly cooked to make sure that you kill any kind of leftover bacteria that may have been growing on it, or anything, just like you would with perhaps chicken meat or something like that. Some people are sensitive to not just eating mushrooms, but touching mushrooms. So slimy mushrooms, sometimes people have trouble with slimy mushrooms and get some contact dermatitis. Are there any wild mushrooms where even touching them is a bad idea? So the slimy mushrooms, possibly people can get some contact dermatitis. There's been some false reports of a mushroom in Australia. It's a red club-looking mushroom, something cornudame, that they said would like burn your skin if you touched it, but that was over-exaggerated. So technically, we tell everybody it's perfectly safe to touch all mushrooms. But a small percentage of people do get some contact dermatitis with the slimy mushrooms. where can you go for mushrooms in Virginia? In Virginia, my favorite places to go is definitely George Washington and Jefferson National Forest. That's a fantastic place to go, and it just borders a whole lot of Southwest Virginia and upwards towards Northern Virginia. I've heard that over towards Central Virginia, Shenandoah National Park, I believe, limits to a gallon per day. Don't quote me on that. Look at their website, but I believe they do have some. But then there's other places like way over on the Virginia beach side. There's a First Landing or something like that state park. I know it, none at all. It's a state park though. So, but national forest in Virginia, I would research those first. Those seem to be the best place for personal mushrooms. A tiny mushroom, this is looks like a private message. A tiny mushroom found at National Tunnel this week. What might it be? About an inch tall. This time of year, that's probably a wax cap mushroom. It probably had yellow gills underneath. Okay, and there's the information for Shenandoah. A gallon for non-morels, half gallon for morels. And it's probably per person per day, I would imagine. All right, does anybody else have any more questions?
Adam, thank you again. That was fantastic. Really appreciate you speaking with us. And just looking at our attendance, you came close to breaking our attendance record of 150 or so Zooms, and you came in second, I think, to another fungus related one. We did one, a specialist from North Carolina State talked about growing truffles. So we had 65 folks, and it looks like you're going to be close to, you're approaching 60 once we add everybody up here. So great job. Really enjoyed that.
I hope everybody learned something today. That was my goal.
I did.
Hey, it was great, Adam. Thanks so much.
My pleasure.
All right. And thanks to all of you for tuning in. And again, this will be posted. If you want to review this again tomorrow, it will be on the Virginia Cooperative Extension Wise County YouTube channel. And also Shad and Jeremy, you all post it. You all want to tell where you post this at?
It goes out on the TV 99, which goes out to, I think, 2 states and 5 counties. And it goes on YouTube and Facebook.
And what I'll do is I usually share Phil's link or Shad's link to our Harlan County Extension Facebook page.
Do we have the well water testing on Thursday, Phil?
Yes, I'll be doing just a short presentation on the well water testing program and just walking people through that process.
Very good.
All right. Thanks again, and hope all of you have a good evening.